Hello, it's Morris back here again, and today we have some massive news on Axie Origins. Well, now season 1 is over, and it is the off season, so I'll call it, I guess, pre-season 2 off season, and there is quite a lot of mechanism kind of updates, so the game mechanic and everything. So I'll just walk you through what's been updated, what we know about it, and also, I guess, my own take on how this might affect the metagame. Okay, so we get this patch where I think there are a lot of massive things, and I guess it's all in the bullet points here, and I'll actually go into this guide a bit later. I'm just going to go through the post first, and first is the base HP of the Axie now goes up to 400, and actually the patch is already up, meaning you can already play it. And yeah, I play a game or two with this new update, and I feel like games are definitely longer because the Axies are healthier, and there are other change mechanics like return now changed to keep, and then there's the energy burst as well, and Bloodmoon actually changed, and that has a massive impact on definitely sustain, but maybe even poison. Probably definitely affects sustain. And actually this one is probably like something that people might not notice, but it is quite big. I feel it makes a lot of Axies more viable, because then so this is changes in the class potential points, and basically now you can equip more or have more potential points with fewer number of cards in that particular class, which I'll go into as well. And now, yeah, this is another one that's pretty good, is that neutral charms can actually now use mixed potential points, meaning let's say you have some bug, plants and beast potential point left over, you can use them all together to equip a neutral charm. Okay, so before getting into the actual mechanic change, just to go through this as well. So now secrets can only be dispelled, which is interesting. That's actually something I didn't even know about, but Arco still works, so that's basically the only way of removing secret now, I assume, unless I missed something. And then yeah, bug fixes is just this, I would say, minor bug fixes. And this one is actually interesting, is that the minting fee has changed, and they actually haven't confirmed yet like the actual cost, but it is good that, let's say, the rare runes and charms definitely cost less to mint compared to the mystic. Okay, so let's actually get into this new mechanic guide, which I opened up here. Okay, so first one is the class potential points now scale linearly, meaning every Axie will have at least 14 potential points, as opposed to before, if you have like a mix, one from every class, right, then you only really have 7 total potential points, whereas now you have at least 14, and that's because they've changed the way that it works. And so this is a very good example, to be honest, right? Because now here you have 2 let's say plant card, let's say assuming this is like a beast, which I assume it is, because of the potential points. So 2 plants cards usually you can't equip, you can only equip, well, I think you only have 2 potential points from before, and so you can't equip things like any 4 potential points charm, and in this example it could be like a moon or a sun stamp on the Rosa, which would be pretty good. But now you can. It's because now if you have a purity of 2, meaning you have 2 cards, then you can actually have 4 PP, meaning you can actually equip 1 4 PP charm, which actually is makes a lot of these mixed Axies, or I guess mixed class cards Axies more viable, I would say, because before you will need to get, let's say, 3 particular cards to be able to equip, or 3 particular cards from a class in order to equip a 4 PP charm, which could be pretty strong, but now you only need 2. So that's probably the biggest change. And yeah, I mean the table is here, but that's how I see it. And you might notice that if you have a purity of 7, meaning a pure breed, with the body being the extra part, right? So you have 6 cards, but then the body also counts as a part, and if those all match, then you actually get 1 extra points, which is the original from S1 as well, so you have 15 points. But for every other Axie that are not pure, then you have 14 points. Okay, and then there is the changes in the neutral charm can now be equipped with mixed potential point, and this is I'll show you this particular picture here. Alright, so for this is a rocket stem, which is a neutral charm, and now you can use a mix of potential point left over from the different classes to be able to equip this. So that actually adds a lot of flexibility and allow the more usage of the neutral charm. And I actually want to show you all like what are the neutral charm that we have, and let me just see. So here are the whole list of neutral charm, and the interesting ones are definitely actually even vitality is good. Right, if you have 3 left over, then that's pretty good. But now I'm not sure how vital vitality is, just because they've actually added extra health for each Axie. But the important ones I would say are the Sun Stamp, Moon Stamp, definitely, and also Rocket, Scotch Tape, Pre-Order Tag. So those are basically the key. So you can actually, if you have some leftover, then put those charms. Yeah, so it is actually like makes these charms a lot more viable, I would say, or rather, they are all viable. It's just more about easier to equip. Yeah, so you might see even some mixed Axies be able to put these charms. Okay, let's get back to this, and let's see what other. Oh, so one thing they do note is that you should put all the class charm first before the neutral one. There is a bit of an order of how it uses, or how the system chooses to use the points. Yeah, and of course they do note that at the moment, well, I say at the moment, I mean from S1, the Dusk, Dawn, and Mag doesn't really that you have 1 extra point that you can't really use. And also for Axies, where let's say if you have a plant but then it's all beast card, which you've seen before, I'm sure, then that 1 potential point, the body point, also is lost because you can't equip any plant like charms. Okay, so so that is for the potential points. And now let's move on to the energy burst. And this is basically ramp, I would say, so you can gain additional energy. To do that, you have to do, well, these 3 things here. But first, let's go through what it is. So energy burst can be triggered by collecting energy fragments. All right, so throughout the games, you basically play the game, and once you get enough energy fragment, then I think next turn after that you will increase your total energy per turn, and that's permanent. Okay, so it's not like a just a one-off thing, so it's a permanent thing, so it's effectively like a ramp. So you do get more extra energy. And how do you collect these fragments? It is by playing cards, so basically using energy. Okay, so use energy to play cards, or use energy to keep a card. Okay, so now instead of return, you keep, which I'll get into later. And there are some effects of some cards, runes, and charms that probably increases the rate in which you can collect the fragments, but I haven't really seen it yet. So I guess we'll have to wait for that. And also, to balance out the going first and second, they actually lower the requirement for a second player to be able to ramp, to be able to get the energy burst. Which is, I don't know how significant it is. It's 3 at the moment. They'll probably have some more balance changes. So here is how it is like. So in S1 we always have basically 0 energy burst. All right, so you have total of 3 energy. And actually another thing that is important to note, which I actually skipped, is the amount of card draw. So yes, so for every 2 energy bursts, you increase the card draw by 1 as well. And I mean, what they say is that sometimes, the games can be quite swingy in terms of getting effects from additional energy. So basically, meaning when you draw your Nemo or your Cottontail, could determine the game, because then you might be able to KO your opponent Axie if you just have an extra energy. So I'm not too sure how relevant this is, to be honest, is because now I feel like it's just allowing every player to basically get extra energy at the later point of the game. That's how I see it. And now, of course, with the extra HP, you will get to the extra point, you'll get further into the game. And so here is the table, and to be fair, realistically, you probably only get to 2 or at most 3 energy bursts for now, but of course there could be other effects that allows you to ramp a lot faster. But for now, from what I've played, I think I got to Bloodmoon and I only get to 5 energy. Right, so I energy bursted twice basically. But the good part is actually quite interesting, is that once you have 1 energy burst, you have 4 energy, you draw 5 cards. And then you have 5 energy, you draw 6 cards, 6 energy, you draw 6 cards. So once you get to this point, you basically, assuming all 1 cost card, then you can just play everything. Yeah, so it will be interesting to see how this plays out, and you might want to then play some higher cost card just because you do draw more cards. You don't really draw that many cards, but then you have extra energy. So that's something that might have to work out in terms of how people actually think about how many 0 cost, 1 cost, or 2 cost card they have in their deck. Okay, so I think that is pretty much it for this energy burst, at least what we know so far, and there will definitely be some future changes. Now it's really just a preliminary, I would say, change, and they did Skylanders did say that they will make further changes along the way. So this is really just to test out how the new mechanic will work, and this is a big one especially for sustain, and that is Bloodmoon getting reworked. So now, instead of doing environmental damage, meaning every turn you do 20 and then 30, 40, and so on, right? What you do now have is that the Axies will get their maximum HP permanently reduced. So I think this is a pretty good example. So first, let's say you can see these Axies are at 320. And after a few Bloodmoon, then you can see it gets down to 270. So the total HP basically decreases. But for Axies that are injured, it's actually not affected, right? Because you just reduce their maximum HP. And that, until you get to a point where the Bloodmoon actually reduces your HP such that it'll be lower than your current HP, then you will start to take damage. But basically what they say is that, let's see where it says, this achieves the goals that ending game will be, inevitably, so meaning it can't go on forever. But with this change, Axies will ultimately need to be finished off, meaning you have to attack the opponent Axie in order to finish him off, as opposed to just waiting for the Bloodmoon to finish off. So that really has a huge impact on sustain, and you probably will see a lot of sustain attacking, definitely at least 2 or 3 attack cards, basically like Tiny Dino or maybe Topaz or something, right? That you can finish the opponents off. So I think that is pretty much the change for the Bloodmoon, and it's a huge change, I would say, especially for sustain. And I personally don't really play sustain, so I don't exactly know how it will affect it, but definitely you will not see the sustain that you have now, just because like now a lot of sustain really only have heal and shield, but without the ability to be able to finish the opponent off, you will definitely see that like those, unfortunately I would say, those Axie with just fully heal and shield might go down in price, just because you do need to tag in a few cards that can finish opponents off. And here's the table, and not too sure why they highlighted this, but I assume it's because this is the turns where, because the maximum HP is 400, so by 2024 you should probably go down. Of course, you can increase your maximum HP with charms and also with Gaia. But I think realistically, this is the maximum you can get to. 25, then every Axie should go down. So I think that's why they highlighted this. Okay, and yes, this is a big one, right? Going from 220 to 400 total HP for each Axie. They haven't actually done it for starter Axie, and that's why you can see this like photo or this illustration hasn't really been updated. But yeah, so this definitely allows more longer gameplay, and that actually means that the aggro might be a lot weaker now. That's my take, because before, right, aggro can just aggro, let's say, one of their opponent's Axie down, and that could give you a very big advantage, because then opponent will draw into curse card, not curse card, but like the revenge cards. But now it makes it a lot harder, and also effectively you need at least 3 more attacks to get through the opponent's team, right? Maybe even 5 more or 6 more. And so for aggro team, where they rely on Cotton Tail and Nemo to burst through opponent, those will be a lot less effective, in the sense that because you only have well, not only have, but usually aggro team runs maybe like 3 copies of Cottontail / Nemo, so I'll say the extra energy card. But now those, you might want to run more of those, I don't know, and maybe like those will be less effective just because of this change. So we'll see how this affects aggro, but this will also probably makes the so-called more longer game plan kind of team. I'm thinking about Leafy in particular, because I play quite a lot of Leafy, and that probably will be a favorable change, just because then you can keep your Axies alive longer, and maybe even poison. But of course, for poison, then you need a further 2-3 turns. But then because poison is meaning like it will do damage, right? Whereas if you can keep your Axies alive for longer while the opponent's still taking poison damage, this could be favorable poison. Not too sure, but we'll see. Okay, moving on. We have the return mechanics is changed to keep. So that's just meaning instead of putting it back into your deck, you just have it in your hand. And so that just means you can draw the normal number of cards that you draw. And that just means you can set up for larger hands, giving you more options. So it's definitely a favorable change, I would say, in terms of gameplay. But then not sure how that makes those charms that retains. Maybe those will be less useful, but to be honest, I think it will still be very useful, because this still requires 1 energy to use to be able to keep. But now you're having it in hand is just a lot stronger, I feel. And people will definitely use it a lot more, even though now return, a lot of people are already using it, but keep definitely is people use it a bit more, I feel. And limit. Okay, so this is a small change, I feel, personally, because I don't really use it, but actually could be quite good, because sometimes you do want to run those card draw cards, and sometimes you just have, say, 2 limits cards in hand and you can't really use them together. But now basically what happens is that you can actually use multiple limit cards. When I say limit cards, I mean cards that has limit, and limit just means you can only play 1 of those cards per turn. And now you can actually play them, but it's just that those cards won't apply their effect. That's why I assume. So let's actually just quickly look at what limit cards there are. Okay, and here they are. So let's say some decks might want to run multiple copies of card draw, and sometimes you have, let's say, 3 of these in hand, and you're like, oh, okay, you can only use 1 and you can't really even play these. Now I think what happens is that the first one you can still draw a card, but then the other ones you can still play, but you won't draw the card, you won't have that effect. I assume similarly for these cards. So that's what I assume will happen. So it's a bit of a buff for limit. And finally, there's the final thing, and they do note that these are not final values and they might be adjusted. But the good thing now is that minting rare runes and charms are a lot cheaper, meaning the floor price of rare runes and charms will be quite a bit lower. Yeah, let's just go back. Sorry. So I was talking about this change of the minting fee. So yeah, I don't know how this will change. But I assume it will be something similar in terms of, rare will be cheapest and so on. Yeah, so that is pretty much it for this update. So hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, be excited to actually go in and try it out. Okay, so that's it for me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed my video, do consider giving me a like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitch, and use my Lenosian code Morris. Thanks again and have a good one.